The Five Rings Podcast, Road to Tokyo on the Sports Podcasting Network. Your weekly fix leading up to the 2020 Olympic Games with Duane Rollins and Kevin Laramée. Follow us and listen to us live on Twitter at Five Rings Podcast and like our Facebook page, facebook.com/Sports Podcasting Network for more content.
And good day, good night. Welcome to the Five Rings Podcast. I'm Kevin Laramée, joined by Duane Rollins as always. And Duane, last week we had a very heavy, very serious conversation and show about a very important topic, and life is about balance. We're bringing the balance with a little more bread and butter Olympic talk. We're going to talk about the new sports making their debut in 2020 in Tokyo, and we're going to discover and learn together.
Exactly. We are a show that does both serious and scoreboard. Our love of this great event comes from the scoreboard, of course. When I say that, for those who don't know, when I say scoreboard issues, I'm talking about the wins and losses and the results of stuff and the games themselves, which is, without those, we don't have anything. So, yeah, this would be a fun one. I don't know, Kevin, we would start this way. Not that you were leading the show, but, I'll just try for a second here. Do you like the fact that they change sports around, or are you traditionalists that think it should be the same every year?
I'm okay with the fact that they changed them a little bit, and I'm also okay with the fact that it's not easy to change them. You don't want a big decision, only like a decision that implies a lot of resources, which I mean a lot of money, a lot of decision to be made about the venue, the building of the venue. Is it fair for every country to be included in that sport? So there's a lot of behind the scene work that needs to be done. But yes, things need to change. Things like sports like skateboarding, which it took too long to get to the Olympics. That's true. So there's a middle ground somewhere. It's has to be there because generations, people move, and sports like cricket that are really popular before. I've been in the Olympics, but back, and then first Olympic, I think. I'm not trying to make an example. I'm just saying sports and popular sports evolve, and the popularity of sports evolve as well. Some of them will always stay popular, but the ones on the fringe, like example, the ones that are not popular now, like shooting and stuff, eventually might disappear to make way to ones that are gonna be more popular. Who knows? Esports, that's another controversial conversation for another day. But no, I am happy that there's an evolution of sports because it reflects the people, and that's what it's about as well. The people, the athletes, and also the fans of the Olympic movement and of sports. So it is normal that it evolves with its public.
Yeah, I'm a big tent guy when it comes to the Olympics, to the point that I would even be kind of radical in a desire to maybe one day see the Olympics split, the Summer Olympics split. So you would have a sort of basically Olympics in 3 or 4 years, but you would have a rotation. It'd be every 4 years for any one sport, but you would have like sort of summer off, winter, summer. You know what I mean? Like that kind of rotation. So you would have like a split. Maybe you could add some more sports. Because the problem, of course, is that you can't keep everything in if you want to add all the new. And as you mentioned, pushing the traditional sports out is sad, but maybe necessary if you're restricted by not expanding the field to the point where you have to have multiple places to host it, which of course is the other answer, which we've talked about a lot. But I don't necessarily think that having like 50 events in an Olympics would be, well, it wouldn't be watchable, really, right? Like, God knows, I'd try, and it would kill me probably.
Yeah, Duane has a personal challenge of watching almost everything humanly possible during the Olympics. So literally, the second he wakes up during an Olympic morning or night, depending of the time zone.
I've told many people that have lived with it before, they don't get it till they get it. I say, you don't understand. When I say I watched the Olympics, I mean I watched the entire Olympics.
He does. I try to catch up. I try to follow, but oftentimes it's me waking up in the morning, texting, doing like, okay, so what are you focusing on so I can catch up on the rest?
Yeah. Okay, Kevin, you can watch cycling. It's fine. I've got you covered on field hockey.
Yeah,
And
the things I
taekwondo,
like to
don't
watch,
worry.
the things I like to watch, takes like 7 hours to watch the whole damn thing, and I'm like, yeah, I love to watch that. Like I watched the entire race walk a couple of months ago, during the World Championships. I love to watch an entire cycling events, endurance events. I don't know for some reason, like I'm far from being an endurance athlete. Look at my body, but for some reason, I kind of like the tactics and the mentality of endurance athletes. So I love to watch those, but the quick sports where 10 seconds you're out, I miss all of those.
Yeah, it is. It is a challenge sometimes to watch it. We'll talk a lot about this. It's fun. I mean, I love about it. I love it's my ADHD brain, right? It's like you got sport and you go here and you go here. I kind of miss the over the top is the way that the future is going in terms of the coverage of the Olympics, and it matters. I just have 7 screens going, but I kind of sometimes get nostalgic. We've gone a little off topic, but welcome to the Five Rings. I kind of get some nostalgic sometimes of like the CBC blasting in and like, oh, we have a developing story in wrestling, and kick there, and yeah.
Sorry, right now we're telling me in my ears right now, Danielle Egali is going for gold for Canada in Sydney. We're sending it to you, Jack. All right, thank you, Leslie. All right here, right now. We're getting. You're right. I miss that sometimes.
Yeah, of course. When we first got Over the Top, which we didn't know that name at the time,
which was just like CBC.ca at the time. There was no name for that medium.
I remember back in, I think it was Barcelona. I was still a kid. We had satellite just growing up, and they had what's called the Red, White, and Blue channels for NBC, and this was the first time that they ever tried to do something similar, where you had entire coverage start to finish, and it really opened my eyes, even as a young kid back then. It didn't work very well then because it wasn't quite full choice. It was just like you could have gymnastics, cycling, or swimming, or whatever, and they would watch all those early heats, which God bless them. They're not that entertaining, really, if you're there to just watch the Olympians as you think of them, because when you watch the early heats of swimming, you're watching.
Oh, you're like, I can make that competition. That's where I can jump in.
Especially back then, when now there's the standards are a little higher, but and there's arguments there too. But anyway, so I learned watching that back then, the little trick that when they were doing live break-ins, they weren't as live as they were putting on sometimes. So,
sometimes it was like an hour later, but we didn't know back then because Twitter did not exist. Facebook did not exist. How would you know? There's no, the newspaper was printed the next day. You can't get the news instantly unless your father or someone you know was in the stand at that event at that moment and call you like, we just want to go. Be like, what? I haven't seen it on CBC yet. Exactly.
I remember, Kevin, we might as well get into the topic at hand in a minute. I remember 2000 being mouth wide open looking at the Sydney Olympic website and being flabbergasted that I could get live text results in 2000. That's not that long ago.
Oh my God, you remember those? Those still exist, and I'm probably going to make these on the website eventually during the Olympics and other stuff, a thread and live updates, and because we want to chat with you and we want to be able to communicate, and the website and that format lends itself to it. So, but that's old school, right? And I used to love those. That's how I followed cycling back then, Duane. Like in 2000, 2005, to 20, all the way to 2010 or so. Cycling wasn't on TV, which is not anymore because they didn't get enough ratings. So that's how I used to follow cycling. You go to cyclingnews.com, you have a webpage, and every 2 minutes, there's a little 2 sentences of telling you what just happened.
Yeah, no, precisely. Or the heats. For heats in the swimming or whatever. It's like, I'd follow whatever this Canadian score. Can they make the semifinals, right? And like you'd be tracking their time and all that and get my spreadsheets out. It's really remarkable that I ever met any human being outside my own circle when I think of it.
So with the sentence you just said, you know what stands out to me? That you had spreadsheet to keep track of scores. That's what I took from your sentence. That's deep. Yeah. That's deep. You have a spreadsheet to keep track of scores. In 2000, on a computer probably running on Microsoft 95.
It would have been Windows 95.
Windows 95. Oh, my Lord. Windows 95. Welcome to the Five Rings podcast. But that's the beauty of it. That's what the Olympics give you, because the Olympic movement happens every 4 years. It's a bit of a time marker. It marks time and space for us sports fan, because we associate things in our lives with the Five Rings podcast. I got freaking engaged during the last Olympics. So yeah, it's a timestamps, and it does give us memories of our past. But in the future, we're gonna make memories watching these new sports. Some of them not as new as you would think, because they're sports making their comeback, like baseball. So we're not gonna dwell on baseball that long. Let's start with karate, Duane, because karate is one of the sports that is exciting me the most. And doing my research for this show, it's exciting me even more, because it's the closest thing to full contact fights that we'll have ever seen at the Olympics.
Yeah, and combat sports are always I've always been a combat sport fan since I was a kid. Used to watch boxing a lot back in the day. Karate has always captured the imagination beyond even sports people. It's kung fu movies and things like that. And I'm not trying to be dismissive of the art of karate when I say that, but in terms of what we consider martial arts, I think karate is what most people picture. And there's a lot of people out there that aren't necessarily sports interested, that are interested in those martial arts and that kind of stuff. And I think this is going to bring in a new audience that maybe doesn't get thrilled by wrestling and amateur boxing, which is not really the same as professional boxing, or taekwondo. They don't know that well. I think this is an opportunity to bring in some new fans. And obviously there's a great historical tie-in to the country that's hosting these games, Tokyo, and the last time they were there, judo came in. I would hope that karate, I'm surprised it's taken this long. Probably the reason it's taken this long is because karate is so vast in what it is.
Yeah.
And the competitive element of it is more difficult to pinpoint, but I think this is long overdue, and I'm excited to see it.
A lot of the karate is bullshit too. We're not gonna lie. Like depending on where you're training, where you're learning, that's why there's a system to verify your senseis, because some of them are just like shoveling clouds and selling you bags full of said clouds. But most of them, and the ones that are recognized, and we'll get there in a second, are important. So there's going to be 2 events, and I love the name, because you know what it's called? It's called the Kumite. And you know what that reminds me of, Duane? Blood sport. It's blood sport. Jean-Claude Van Damme in the most 80s of movies ever made.
Doing the splits over the
2 chairs. The 2 bad FBI agent running after him, and one of them is Forrest Whitaker. Like, yeah, okay. Yeah, that's how you started your career. Anyways, there's 2 events. Kumite, which is basically a bracket open tournament for an Olympic gold medal. Not too shabby. And then there's a kata, and that will be interesting too. Let's start with the Kumite, Duane. Kumite, the individual tournament for the Kumite competition at the World Karate Federation Karate World Championship, is held under a weight class system comprising 5 divisions, each for both men and women. However, the Kumite competition at the Summer Olympics will consist of just 3 divisions. Each, thus, for men, 67 kilograms, 75 kilograms, 75 kilograms. For women, 55, 61, and over 61, which is over 75, the last categories in the men. You know what that tells me, Duane? We've seen this in boxing, and we've seen this in judo as well. Athletes that are in the categories, the 2 that are not represented in those 3 weight classes, are either going to try to go in a weight class above their natural weight class or below their natural weight class, and it will either help or hinder them. But that's one of the sacrifices sometimes of these sports. When you become an Olympic sport, your standards change a bit, and they don't have time for 5 weight class, so 3 are created, and athletes have to adjust.
Yeah, we see it in Taekwondo and Judo where there are the restrictions in the weight classes. It's unfortunate, but it does relate to the ballooning size of the games, which kind of relates to the point I made earlier. But yeah, it's just be good to have it. The thing I like about karate is, again, relates to how it ties into the host country. And I think that's an important tradition that the Olympics have had over the years, bringing in sports that matter to the countries that they're held in. They used to have and I don't know, Kevin, if you're old enough to remember the exhibition sports when they used to have them.
I do. I remember roller skating. I remember speed skating and rollerblades and stuff.
Yeah, and if you go all the way back to, I know you won't remember '88, but in '88 in Calgary, they even had a rodeo exhibition
Oh my
at the
lord.
Calgary Sub Winter Olympics, which obviously
That's
that's
so
not the winter
Calgary.
sport.
That's
Yeah,
so Calgary.
and ski ballet, which is
Oh,
still
that's awesome. In Albertville,
yeah,
1992.
it's made a comeback in terms of the cultural understanding because of YouTube ski ballet. There's a lot of
It
videos
has
that
like
people like.
millions of views. That thing's awesome. All right, here are the rules for the karate kumite fights. In any category, fights last for up to 3 time minutes, i.e. the clock stops every time the referee says yame. So it's 3 minutes of time, but it's going to last longer. During that period, the winner is considered to be the karateka who scores 8 points more than their adversary. If this does not happen, the person with more points at the end of the fight is the winner. It's a fight. It's not a match, right? It's called a fight. It's kind of interesting. It gives it a more drama. The fight ends. If the fight ends up tied, the decision will be given through the shenshu, the rules. The contestant that scored the first unopposed point wins, and that's how you score points right here. You have a ippon, 3 points for hitting the head or neck of the opponent with a kick, or when any technique is applied to a fallen adversary. That's an ippon, 3 points. A waza ari, that's 2 points. It's for applying a kick to the belly, side, back, or torso of the opponent. It's the same terminology as judo, but they mean different maneuvers or techniques or results here in karate. And the yuko, a 1 point, is for delivering a punch with closed hand, which is called the tsuki, to the head, neck, belly, side, back, or torso of the opponent.
Yeah, I think it's going to be very intuitive to anyone who's watched any of the combat or martial arts sports before. Taekwondo, to me, Taekwondo is it's understandable right away when I watch it. And even though I sometimes go, I'm kind of a cliche every 4-year Taekwondo watcher, but I get it right away. And I think that karate, from what I'm hearing and what I've read, is going to be very similar, that you're just going to get it after a minute. And those blows, those 3-point blows, are going to be rare and a big deal when they happen. In a lot of the top matches will be.
What's going to be fascinating is if it ever happens, because the fact that there is protection on the hands and the feet. I doubt we're going to see a highlight reel knockout spin wheel kick or something. But if that happens, that will get the headlines of Sports Center and Sportnet Central across the world. The other discipline in karate, and that's the fascinating one that I never thought I would see in the Olympics, is a kata. I remember the boring part of when I used to do karate. I wanted to fight. I didn't want to do the katas. But competitors are judged on the power and correctness of their techniques. Under conventional competition rules, one competitor is assigned a blue belt and the other a red belt, and each takes a turn in demonstrating his or her kata. The outcome of the competition is determined under a flag system where 5 judges, who each have a blue flag and a red flag, raise either to signal which competitor they believe won. The one with the more flags raised in his or her favor is declared the winner. However, discussions are still ongoing into the judging system, including whether to use a scoring system rather than the flag system.
Nothing can possibly go wrong here.
And just
yeah, what I'll say about this is that this is very traditional, obviously, and it's very important. If you've ever met someone that's deep in the karate world, they will give a lot of deference to this element of their sport.
Yeah, the flags. Yeah.
It's important for them to have these forms basically included in this. It's dressage, basically, if you want to think about it in another term.
Yeah, it's true.
But it's important because it speaks to the values of that sport. But the flag, that seems like a bad idea.
That's gotta go.
Yeah.
Put a point system in there. And just to go back to the amount of styles of karate here, due to the immense number of karate styles, each with its own katas, only katas from the styles recognized by the World Karate Federation. So that's Goju-ryu, Shito-ryu, Shotokan. Shotokan was a type that I was doing when I was a kid, and that's the type that George St. Pierre did, Shotokan. And there's also Wado-ryu. Those are the only 4 type of karates that will be competing in the kata type are allowed in the Olympics. The lack of representation of many karate styles in the kata competition generates much criticism from practitioners of these styles around the globe. But hey, go fight instead. You don't have to dance, just go fight.
Yeah, I think we probably dealt with this one a lot. And when you're, in the months ahead, we'll get the previews. We'll start to roll out. We'll dive in a lot deeper and sort of more of the strategies behind these sports and all that. And that's something we should reiterate here before we continue, that I do pledge to you that you will get the previews that you got in the last two Olympics. It's, about 10 minutes for each sport in the Olympics, where you get previews and you get a little bit of a, who the best athletes are, who the medal contenders are. I also include who, for our Canadian listeners and for ourselves, who the top Canadians in the events are, if any. There are a few in the summer games where there's not a lot. But we'll talk all about that stuff.
And we can also pledge that you'll get more coverage than you think, and probably on Five Rings Extra, which will be a project Duane and I will probably start to work on in the next few months on the Sports Podcasting Network's Patreon page. So you can get a head start and go to our Patreon page at patreon.com/sports podcasting network. Let's go to another sport. Let's quickly go with baseball and softball, Duane. The baseball making its comeback at the Olympics after missing 2 Olympic cycles. Baseball coming back in Japan. That is very fitting as well. Not its birthplace, but the second, I would say maybe the third biggest hotspot for baseball in the world after Latin America.
Yeah, I mean, arguably, here's the thing about baseball, softball as well. We should include them all in the same here, really. It's back to ball sports. They're massive in Latin America, as you just said. And this is why it's such a shame that they got knocked out. And it really speaks to the IOC's Eurocentric thinking sometimes. And the fact that they're bringing them back in is great, but it's probably only going to be for 1 game. That's unfortunate. I'm glad softball's in there too, although I wish they would just I don't like it when they differentiate between men's and women's. I'd rather they go one or the other, because women play baseball now. There is at the Pan Am Games, I saw women play baseball.
And men play softball. So choose. If you don't want to have baseball, just create it. Like, okay, at the Olympics movement, everyone plays softball or everyone plays baseball.
Which softball makes some sense. I don't want to belabor these two sports right now because we've gone along already, but softball makes sense to me, because baseball has a professional element, and it's the summer games. It'd be very difficult to get the MLB players out for that. IOC wants the best there, so I think that if you went softball for the men and continued with the women, then you would have the best athletes in that sport in the world, and that would make more sense to me.
I totally agree. Now, a sport that we will both discover at an Olympic level, where we're not necessarily familiar with it, surfing. And we'll see how interesting surfing will be. Surfing will look a bit like this. The 2020 Summer Olympics will use a 4-man heat structures. 4 athletes will compete at any given time. The best 2 of each heat will continue to the next round. Each heat will run for 20 to 25 minutes, with their top 2 scores being used. Only one rider may ride a wave at any given time. Using calming surfing etiquette rule, where the surfer who is closest to the peak has right of way. Any interference with the surfer who has right of way can incur a penalty and result in point deductions. A panel of judges will determine each rider's performance from wave to wave, scoring from 1 to 10 with 2 decimals, example 8.51. Scores are based on the difficulty of maneuvers performed. This includes speed, power, and flow of each maneuver.
I think this is going to be one of those sports that I watch with my mouth wide open, completely baffled at what I'm looking at, but enjoying it nonetheless, because it's going to be beautiful to look at on every level, I suspect, and it's made for TV. Absolutely. I am looking forward to seeing this. I wish it wasn't completely judge based, and it's going to be very element based too. And we were joking off air that this could turn into the downhill of the summer games, that we might not get waves on any given day, and we'll be waiting for a week to get the competition going.
Like, okay, today's surfing competition is postponed to tomorrow because of a possibility of a great white shark coming in the surfing area competition. So it's postponed for today. Then the next day, okay, today we don't have a competition because there's no waves.
Yeah.
So yeah,
and it does. Look, it's a problem for, like, I'm thinking of the country I'm in, and I don't think Canada's going to bid for summer games anytime soon. But how the hell would we have a surfing competition for Toronto?
Indoors.
We're going to surf on Lake Ontario? What?
Indoor surfing. Well, you'd be surprised. There's some parts of Lake Ontario or close to Montreal here in the St. Lawrence River, where because there's two river meeting each other creates like an eternal wave, and you can ride that. But no, you don't ride it, you surf it. But that's the thing, you need to ride to surf an Olympic style. So we probably won't ever see a surfing competition. I think and that's already been talked about, and there's Costa Rica trying to bid to host a surfing competition of the Paris game, because where are you going to surf in Paris, Duane? Where are you going to surf? On the side?
on the river?
Yeah, come on. Behind a boat? Yeah, that's called kiteboarding. No, not kiteboarding. It's called, what is it called? Wakeboarding. It's wakeboarding. That's different.
Here's my suggestion on surfing before we continue. Look, I'm looking forward to learn that. That's my main thought. But my suggestion for the IOC is, if they do want to keep this going, we're going to test that theory about naming a permanent spot for it, because just have it in Hawaii.
Yeah.
Have it where surfing is famous.
Or San Francisco. Like, you have it in Half Moon Bay where the Mavericks waves are. Have it there every 4 weeks, every 4 years. That could be something. But that's I think about the surfing competition, and I see potential hiccups here and there. Nothing to do with the sports or the fans or the thing. Just, you don't control the entirety of your environment and of your parcours, of your event, period. So it's going to be what it's going to be.
Exactly. But it will be beautiful to watch, with beautiful people participating in it. So I think it's going to be incredibly TV friendly, and it's going to be probably easily packageable. So I bet you NBC, for our American listeners, is going to show a lot of surfing. Yeah,
and I was going to say a name from Kelly something. I don't think they surf anymore. He was a surfer back in like 1998 or something. But no, those are going to be fun time. All right, let's move to sports climbing. That's maybe the most significant, I would say, sports joining the Olympics in this group because of the size and the differences of the disciplines itself. There's big differences between the type of climbing that will happen at the Olympics. There's 3 big different type of climbing. You have speed climbing, bouldering, and lead climbing. 3 disciplines, 1 goal, according to Olympic promotional literature, is to get up there, to get to the mountain. I get it, but no, it's 3 totally different disciplines. So that won't be a big part of it, is how do you really go, like, you'll see different, I would say, favorites in different sports. There's a few really great Turkish speed climber, but bouldering is totally different. So here's a little resume of each of the disciplines, Duane, for our audio listeners, so they can get a little idea of what it is. Speed climbing is kind of self-explanatory. The speed climbing portion will be contested in one-on-one heats under a bracket tournament structure. A competitor will not necessarily have to reach the fastest time of the day to advance in the tournament. He or she will merely have to be faster than the opponent during each given heat. That being said, the men will likely have to clock runs under 6 seconds to advance to later heats, with the current world record being held at 5.48 seconds, and the fastest woman will likely have to clock runs under 8 seconds. So that's for speed climbing. The world record for the woman right now is 7.10, and it's that Turkish athletes I was talking about earlier. Bouldering, Duane, is totally different. In the bouldering portion, competitors will each get 4 minutes to reach the top of each boulder in a set of 4. Credit will be given for securely reaching the top hold in a controlled manner with both hands. If a competitor does not reach the top of a given boulder, separate credit will be awarded if the competitor's elite reaches a zone hold, so halfway of the hold, I would imagine, midway up a given boulder, which is what I was just saying. The number of attempts will also contribute to a competitor's bouldering score. The leaderboard is determined first by the number of tops, then attempts, then zones. So if you clear all your boulders in the fastest time, you're going to be first. Then all the boulders with all the attempts and just 3/4 of the zones, and so on and so forth. In other words, a competitor who tops a boulder in 2 attempts will have a better score than a competitor who tops the same boulder in 6 attempts.
It's like the high jump or the pole vault.
Exactly. That's a good way to explain it. And the lead climbing portion offers the easiest scoring structure. Each hold controlled on the lead wall represents a point. The competitor who reaches the highest spot on the wall will get the most points and thus win the discipline. Technicalities and controversies could arise when judging whether competitors have control of a certain hold. If a competitor dynos for a hold and touches it but cannot secure a lasting grip before falling, should a point be awarded? If it lasts 2 seconds versus 5, does the body weight hold under that hold or not? Those are all issues and situations that we will see happen in the lead climbing, and the winner of the competition will have to have the best overall standings after the 3 discipline. So this makes it one of the hardest medals to win at the Tokyo 2020 Olympic Games.
Yeah, I'm actually really looking. I've never watched it in particular, other than a little bit of blips here and there. I've seen the speed one before. I haven't seen bouldering before. I've heard of it. I knew of all these things. And what I find interesting about speed climbing, and why I think that even though it's probably the least well known of all the sports that are coming in, to me it's the most likely to stick, is because it's actually, if you think about it, it's testing a different type of movement than almost any other sport out there in the Olympics. We don't have another thing that's similar, and that's what the Olympics is all about, is testing human achievement in a certain way. And this is a different, unique, new thing that they're testing. And the fact that they commodified it and codified it, I should say, and given it rules and a world championship, all that, it's overdue. And I think it's going to be really interesting to watch.
It's basically running at a 90-degree angle upwards. So
we don't have anything, like, am I wrong? Like, gymnastics has an element to it, I suppose, where you're pulling yourself upwards.
The leaping element, yes, but you don't have the pulling element. You don't have the speed element. It's 100 meters. Like, 5.78 seconds, Wayne. They climb faster than people run.
Yeah, no, it's
not 100
like
meters, but it's less than 100 meters, but you know what I mean.
It's hard to imagine that more than 100 years into the Olympic movement, they've found a new way to measure human movement. I guess people weren't randomly climbing rocks back for competitive, at least 100 years ago. But
no, they had to worry about eating and not getting eaten by a tiger. So aspect. Now that we're secure in our lifestyle for the amount of time that the planet will last us, we can dwell on who climbs the fastest. That's why the sports makes it to the Olympics at this time.
Exactly. No, so it should be fun. And I think that different, like testing different elements of your climbing ability is going to really compel to me. It's almost like a decathlon in a different way. And if you watch the multi-sport events and the multi-sport disciplines, I should say, with decathlon, heptathlon, that's what I'm talking about. And if you enjoy those as I do, this is a different kind of thing. A little, not quite the same, but I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to this one. And, it contributes to the X Gamesification of the Olympics, which we talk about more on the winter side, but certainly with surfing and skateboarding, which we'll talk about next, and sport climbing coming in, we're getting more of it on the summer side as well. And as we said, a theme of the show is you've got to evolve and reflect the times. So this should be a fun one to watch.
And let's talk about the last sport on our agenda for today, skateboarding. 2 event representing skateboarding at the Olympics, Duane, and here they are. Let me just get my page here. So there's going to be 2 events. Of course, you have the street event and the park event. What's the big difference between the two? Here it is, according to the IOC and the Tokyo 2020 organizing committee. This competition, this one is street. This competition is held on a straight, street-like course featuring stairs, handrails, curbs, benches, walls, and slopes. Each competitor performs individually and utilizes each section to demonstrate a range of skills or tricks. Judging takes into account such factors as degree of difficulty of the tricks, height, speed, originality, execution, and the composition of moves in order to award an overall mark. Now, let's move to park quickly. Park competitions take place on an hollowed-out course featuring a series of complicated curves, some resembling large dishes and dome-shaped bowls from the bottom of the cavity. The carved surfaces rise steeply with the upper part of the incline either vertical or almost vertical. Among the attractions of park competitions are the immense heights achieved by climbing the curves at speed and performing amazing mid-air tricks. So basically, think about Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1 on your PlayStation. Remember when you were in the pool? Yeah, the pool is park and the street is the rest of the game.
And just like playing Tony Hawk back in the day, if I were out there, I would fall.
I would die. I would die so bad.
Very bad at Tony Hawk. It's funny how it's too bad Tony Hawk's too old to be in the Olympics now. How someone is so synonymous with the sport.
I think he's gonna go. Like I think he's going. I'm not kidding. Really? I think he's going.
How old would he be? He's in his 50s, is he not?
He's still one of the best in the world. Like he pulled off like a 1280 or something a few years ago.
Well, maybe we'll be cheering for him a little bit for nostalgic reasons. Look, the fact that we're talking about an iconic video game from the 90s and that sport is just now getting in the Olympics tells you that it's overdue.
That's true. That's a very good point. But yeah, that's going to be interesting. I think the park and the street both will be a fascinating event, and I'm looking forward to seeing like the Flying Tomato. Shaun White will be. He doesn't like
trying to get his
tomato.
double. Yeah,
he's gonna try it. So that's gonna be very interesting.
And well, that's just it too. I think that won't be the only time you'll see someone go win or summer doubles, which is a very rare feat to do indeed. And but skateboarding and snowboarding might be. And I'm just trying to think here, but there's not a lot of sports that are summer winter that are as comparable. This really is. Snowboarding is skateboarding on snow. I mean, literally, that's how it started. So this is I
agree with you 100%.
The reason skateboarding took this long really is because it's a counterculture sport. It always has been. There has been a resistance towards creating sort of the infrastructure that needed to happen before they could get Olympic status. There's still not a ton of infrastructure compared to other sports. It still maintains a little bit of that counterculture. So does snowboarding, though. And snowboarding, I remember, I think I've told the story on this show before, too. When I went to college, the guy that used to drive with me was a professional snowboarder. He was a professional, not at an Olympic level. In fact, he hated the fact that it was in the Olympics because it was so close to when it debuted. This is early 2000s I'm talking here. But that was a big debate and a big conversation. We used to talk about this all the time. He'd be like, we look down our nose at the competitive people because we want to just go out and get in the powder. And that's what he did professionally. He was actually he was in journalism school because he was trying to evolve his career to the next point where he could be the guy with the camera shooting them when they were in there, which is still an element of professional snowboarding. Anyway, he's an interesting cat. He only did it for a year, got good enough, and then he left to snowboard more. So good for him. Anyway, I should look him up, see what he's doing. But nonetheless, it's a sport that not everyone's probably going to be on board yet in that world. But could you imagine the Winter Olympics without snowboarding?
Dwayne, once they see that the first big sponsor, it's like, okay, it's all well and good. There's a lot of people making a great living in the skateboard world, I imagine, with the skateboard company and the culture and having a great paycheck out of it for sure. But when Coca-Cola or Nike is going to sign a superstar made in the Olympics, the game will change.
You mentioned Shaun White, right?
Yep. Yeah. Oh, there you go. Shaun White it's the perfect example in the world of snowboarding. He
would have been 100,000-er in the old world of snowboarding. He's now a multimillionaire because of his status as America's greatest snowboarder. And if he can pull this off, he's going to be even richer, which is hard to say. But it's we talked about skateboarding in the Olympics, like in the original show. It's the one before we went on hiatus. We talked about it a couple times when a couple different shows when we talk about things we want to see in the Olympics. And I always consistently would come back to this. It makes so much sense. Like I bet you, I dare you, if you live in a city, if you're listening to this podcast in a major city and anywhere in the world, go out of your door, walk around for an hour. I guarantee you, it doesn't matter what the weather is even, I guarantee you'll see a skateboarder today.
Even in the winter now, because the winters are not as bad as advertised in Canada now, at least where I am and where you are. So, because streets are clear most of the winter, I see skateboarders all year long. So, yeah, it is an important part of the culture that's finally not ignored anymore.
Yeah, it has to be in here. And, I mentioned how sport climbing might have the best to stick. I think skateboarding still has some hurdles, and it has to do with the infrastructure, as I spoke of. They're going to have more established world championships and more established sort of rankings and World Cup circuits and things like that.
Well,
they exist.
Just an organizing body that's recognized as a top organizing body of the whole sport, which does exist more in snowboard because of this International Ski Federation. So there's that.
Yeah, so they need to get more. They need to get a little more organized for this to truly stick long term. But I think that it's hard to ignore it. How can you ignore it? I said it has counterculture elements to it, but is it really counterculture?
Well, not anymore. It's culture, period.
I used to live by University of Toronto before I moved into my new place. And I would see like professors, like gray beard guys skateboarding to work. It's not counterculture anymore when your prof is skateboarding to work. Guys, like it's just a means of communication of commuting for people and just like cycling or anything else, then it has to be in the Olympic movement.
Because the prof is the age of Tony Hawk. So he's used to skating. Yeah. And the funny thing I found in this article that I was reading from is the first sentence is, a skateboard is a narrow board of wood or composite material with 4 wheels. I was like, wow. Okay. Some people are starting from way back.
Exactly. Yes. I'm looking forward to that one. I'm looking for all of them. I think they should be fun. And there's maybe surfing is the one that's coming in for TV, but at the same time, it's something that's been going on for a long time, and it should make great TV. And that's an important consideration in the Olympic movement, is you have to put stuff out that people want to watch.
Exactly.
No one's turning to watch modern pentathlon.
One quick thing that I wanted to run by you before we say goodbye, Duane, in its honor of the World Series 7th game tonight, and we did talk about baseball today, so it's kind of fitting. I saw this on social media. Someone sent it to me. You have 10 at-bats against a Major League Baseball or an Olympic pitcher. A foul tip will give you $100. Ball in play will give you $1,000. A base hit will give you $10,000, and a home run will give you $1 million. How much money are you walking away after 10 at-bats?
Okay. I'm going to caveat this a little bit. $100 is what I'm going to say. I think I could get the bat on one pitch in a bunt position.
1 out of 10 out of 10
and
bunt
it would
to
fly
10.
back. Yeah, I'd tick it basically. And I say this because I play goal on a gym with guys that can blast soccer balls at me at a fairly high speed. So I'm used to balls coming at my head fast. Yeah, I heard it. Clip it if you want. But at the same time, on that note, no, I think I could get my bat on one ball. But I am not delusional enough to think that I could actually swing and hit the thing. I wouldn't even see it.
That's insane. But maybe that technique would actually work. Okay, so out of 10 attempts, if I try to bunt 10 times, maybe I actually tipped it once. Okay, maybe I'll make $100. But let's be honest here. Most of us will probably walk out with nothing, swinging 10 times in the air looking like a fool. Yeah, and scared for our life, to be fair, because that ball comes in fast.
Yeah. Well, that's actually what I said when you tweeted that yesterday. Is I think I'd make $100, but I'd get one on, foul it off, then I'd go change my pants. That's what I said. So, quickly, Kevin, last question before we say goodbye. As a former Expos fan, Nationals are. Do you want them to win or do you want them to lose?
I wanted them to lose before, but then I got to know who the Astros are. And then I got to know, oh, yeah, you got that picture with you. Oh, yeah, your VP, your assistant general manager, just got fired during the World Series for making extremely stupid remarks to reporters. So I don't like the Astros. I don't like the Nationals. But the Nationals did do a few nice things and put a few nice videos out there between commercials about the Expos and all. So it got me a bit teared up. It got me a bit reminiscing. But it's still not the Expos winning if they won. It's a different franchise in my mind. And if
wait three more years when Tampa Bay moves north.
Yeah, but when Tampa Bay moves north, the Expos will never have won. the World Series, right? So I view it as just the Nationals themselves, and I think that's the first time that I put a disconnect between the Expos and the Nationals in my mind. So at least it's the process of healing has started, I would say.
All right, fair enough. I will
15
not be
years later.
watching for the very reasons that you just articulated, because I am not forgiving the Nationals for stealing the Expos, because I was an Expos fan as a kid, not as much as Kevin, but I was. And I can't cheer for the Astros, even though they seemed like a good story a few years ago until you started to scratch below the surface, and it turns out they're just a bunch of cliche sports bros.
Yep, exactly. And that's the reason why I'll probably not be watching, because there's TFC and then there's other thing we need to cover today. But on that note, you can follow Duane on social media at 24th Minute, myself at Kev Laramée. Hope you enjoyed the show. Hope you learned a little bit about the new sports coming to Tokyo 2020 next year, and hope you continue to support us as well. Make sure you do at patreon.com/sportspodcastnetwork. And until next week, for Duane, I'm Kevin. Own your podium, folks.